I have never paid $5 for a cup of coffee, and I drink 4 cups a day. The kettle I make it in is blue enamel with a chip out of the rim. It sits at the back of my stove here in Norway, and my method takes 4 minutes and has not changed since a man wrote it down in 1861. Here is the whole of it. Cold water in the kettle. Bring it to a boil and pull it off the heat. Count to 30 while it settles, then throw the coarse ground coffee straight into the water. No filter, no basket, no paper, nothing between the water and the bean. Put the lid on and leave it alone for 4 minutes. Then a small splash of cold water, which drops the grounds to the bottom, and you pour slowly and steadily from a low height and stop before the last inch. That is it. That is the entire technology. It costs somewhere around 40 cents a cup where you live. It requires no machine, no pod, no cartridge, no descaling, no subscription, and nothing on your counter that can break in year 3 and cannot be repaired. I want to be careful here, because the easy version of this is an old man wagging his finger about the price of a latte. And you have heard that before, and you did not need me for it. The interesting part is not that the coffee shop is expensive. Everybody knows the coffee shop is expensive. The interesting part is that the cheap way makes better coffee than the expensive way, and it does so for a reason you can test in your own kitchen tomorrow morning. The machine on your counter is not doing you a favor. In almost every case, it is doing the one thing that ruins coffee, and it is doing it reliably, 400 times a year, and nobody has ever told you. There is also a real health caution buried in my method, an unflattering one that I am going to hand you in full rather than leave out. But we will come to that honestly, in its place.
Coffee is not a recipe, it is an extraction. Hot water pulls compounds out of ground coffee in a particular order, and the whole business of brewing is stopping at the right moment. The sweet things and the aromatic things come out first. The bitter, drying, ashtray things come out last. Pull too little and it is sour and thin. Pull too long and it is bitter. There is no third failure. Only 3 things control that: how coarse the grind is, how hot the water is, and how long the two sit together. A drip machine controls exactly none of them well. It takes whatever grind you bought, usually a fine, dusty pre-ground that over-extracts within a minute. It heats water in a small element that on most household machines never actually reaches the range you want, which is just off the boil, and then it dribbles that under hot water through the bed at whatever speed the pump feels like. Then, having made mediocre coffee, it sets the pot on a hot plate and cooks it for the next hour, which is the single most destructive thing you can do to a finished brew. Coffee that has sat on a warming plate for 40 minutes is a different and much worse drink than the same coffee poured at minute 1. The kettle fixes all 3 at once, and it does it with a stove and a clock instead of with money. Coarse grind because the coffee is going to sit in the water for 4 full minutes, and a fine grind would be bitter long before then. You want the texture of coarse sea salt, not flour. Water just off the boil because you took the kettle off the heat and counted 30, which drops it into the right window without a thermometer. And 4 minutes exactly, because that is the point where the good has come out and the bad has not. Ratio is the 4th thing, and it is the one Americans get wrong in the same direction every time. Most weak coffee in the world is not weak because the beans were bad or the brewing was short. It is weak because there was not enough coffee in it, and then the drinker compensates by letting it run longer or sit hotter, which does not add strength, it adds bitterness. Use 1 heaping tablespoon of grounds for each cup of water, and do not negotiate with yourself about it. If the result is too strong for you, add hot water to the cup afterward. That gives you a weaker cup of good coffee, which is a different thing entirely from a full cup of bad coffee. And once you have tasted the difference, you will not go back. The splash of cold water at the end is not a folk superstition. Cold water is denser, it sinks, and it takes the floating grounds down with it. Wait a moment after that and the grounds pack at the bottom and stay there while you pour. Then take it off the heat entirely and pour it into a thermos if you are not drinking it all at once. Never leave it over a flame. A pot of coffee kept hot is a pot of coffee being slowly ruined. Everything in that paragraph is free. Not one word of it required you to buy anything.
Coffee arrived in this country around the 1690s, and for 100 years it was a curiosity for people in Bergen and the capital. Then 2 accidents of history made it a national habit. The first was smuggling, more or less legally. Norway was ruled from Copenhagen, and Denmark controlled a free port at St. Thomas in what are now the Virgin Islands. Goods brought in through that port counted as domestic trade and paid no duty. At one point, roughly 9/10 of the coffee reaching Norway came by way of Copenhagen, at a price well below what the rest of Europe was paying. Enterprising men on the coast then rowed some of it over the border into Sweden, which is a fine reversal for anybody who knows how the border trade runs today. Later, we simply traded what we had for what we wanted, which meant fish for beans. The second was that this country made alcohol difficult. We ran a prohibition period, and when it ended, we kept the taxes high, and they are high to this day. When the drink that brings people around a table is expensive and awkward to get, another drink takes the chair. Coffee took it and has never given it back. By the late 1800s, coffee was everywhere in this country, and most of it was terrible. The point was quantity. The pots were boiled to death, and there are old recipes calling for isinglass or a scrap of fish skin or a lump of red-hot charcoal thrown into the kettle to clear the brew. Then Peter Christian Asbjørnsen took an interest, and this is where the story gets good. Asbjørnsen is not an obscure man. He and Jørgen Moe went out into the valleys and collected the Norwegian folk tales, the trolls and the boy who ate for a whole nation, and the 3 billy goats crossing the bridge. And they wrote them down and gave this country its own voice back. If you had a book of Norse stories as a child, you had him in your hands. He was also a naturalist, a forestry official, and a genuine crank about food. In 1861, he published a small book on coffee, its use, its value, its proper handling, and its adulteration. That last word tells you what he was angry about, because the shops of the day were cutting coffee with chicory and roasted grain and worse. He set out how to grind it, how hot the water should be, how long to let it stand, and how not to boil the life out of it. Ordinary households started paying attention, and the kettle method, as I still make it, settled into its shape from there. That word, adulteration, deserves a moment, because it is the part that has not aged at all. What he was describing was a trade where the customer could not tell what was in the bag, and where the seller had every reason to keep it that way. The remedy he offered was not a law and not an outrage. It was that ordinary people should learn what the real thing tasted like and how to make it properly at home, at which point nobody could sell them the fake. That is a strategy, not a complaint, and it is roughly the whole argument of this episode dressed in a frock coat. That is why I said 1861 rather than something vaguer. There is a book, there is a name on it, and the name belongs to the man who collected our fairy tales. What came of it is a country that drinks somewhere between 18 and 22 pounds of coffee per person per year, depending on which year and whose figures, about 3 cups a day, sitting up near the very top of the world's tables while America sits far down the list. We roast light rather than dark, and the reason is not fashion. A dark roast tastes of the roast. It will hide a cheap, flat, poorly sorted bean, which is exactly what it is often asked to do. A light roast has nowhere to hide, so it demands a better bean and then lets you taste it. And the oldest roastery in this country was founded in Bergen in 1799 by a ship's captain named Herman Freeler. It is still on the shelf in every grocery store here. 2¼ centuries, and the standard morning coffee of this whole nation is a bag of ground beans that costs about what a bag of beans should cost. Now the arithmetic, and I am going to use your prices and not mine. A 12-ounce bag of decent coffee in an American grocery store runs about $10 to $15 and yields somewhere around 22 to 25 cups. That puts a cup between 40 and 80 cents. Add milk and it is still under $1. At the counter, a small brewed coffee at the large chain runs roughly $3, and once you are into a latte, you are at 4 to 5, more with a flavor or an extra shot. Take a $4.50 drink once a day, and you are at about $32 a week, and somewhere near $1,650 a year for one drink a day, every day, no pastry, no second cup. I am not going to tell you that you will bank $1,600, because nobody drinks nothing instead. Making it at home for the same year costs you somewhere around $200 in coffee. Call it $1,400 of difference, in your own hand, for a habit you were going to have anyway. Here is what that $1,400 does not have to buy. It does not have to buy a machine. You own a kettle or a saucepan already, and the method needs nothing else. If you want the tidiest version, a small stovetop kettle with a spout runs about $25 and lasts forever. It does not have to buy filters or pods or cartridges ever again, which is a small recurring line on your grocery bill that you have stopped noticing. The one thing I would have you spend on is a grinder, and a hand grinder runs about $20 to $30. Coffee begins losing its aromatics within minutes of being ground, and it is largely gone in a week or two. This is the single largest difference between a good cup and a dull one, larger than the beans, far larger than any machine. A $10 bag ground fresh beats a $20 bag ground in a factory 8 months ago every single time. The other thing worth owning is a thermos, $25 to $35 for a good steel one. Make the kettle once in the morning, pour the whole of it into the thermos, and you have hot coffee at 10 and at 2 and at 4, without a warming plate cooking it, and without brewing 3 times. This is not a camping accessory here. It is standard equipment in a Norwegian house. It goes into the car and out into the woods, and it is the reason nobody here is buying a cup at 11 in the morning because they happen to be out. Buy whole beans with an actual roast date printed on the bag rather than a best before date 2 years out. Buy a pound at a time and no more, so you drink it while it is alive. Keep it in a sealed jar in a dark cupboard, not in the freezer and not on the windowsill. $60 of equipment, once. Then 40 cents a cup for the rest of your life.
Now the part I owe you, and it is a real one, and it is about my own method. Coffee beans contain 2 oily compounds called cafestol and carwale. A paper filter catches nearly all of them. My kettle catches none of them, because there is no filter in my kettle, and that is the whole point of the method. Those compounds raise LDL cholesterol. This is not a suspicion, it is measured, and the Nordic countries know it better than anyone, because we are the ones who drink it this way. In controlled studies, unfiltered boiled coffee raised LDL by something in the order of 8 to 10%. The concentration difference is not subtle either. Boiled coffee has been measured at roughly 940 milligrams of cafestol per liter. Paper-filtered coffee comes in around 5 to 24. Pour that same boiled coffee through even a cloth filter, and it drops to 28. The Nordic nutrition recommendations issued in 2023 advise limiting unfiltered coffee for exactly this reason. A long-running heart study out of Tromsø, up in our north, found lower cholesterol and lower cardiovascular death among the paper filter drinkers than among the boiled coffee drinkers. So I'm not going to stand here and tell a man of 70 with a cholesterol number he is already watching to throw away his filters, because an old Norwegian likes his coffee unstrained. If your doctor has you on that conversation, the fix costs about 4 cents. Make the coffee in the kettle exactly as I described, and then pour it through a paper filter in a cone into your mug. You keep the grind control, the water temperature, the 4 minutes, and the cost. You lose the oils, which is what you wanted. A French press, for what it is worth, sits in the middle, roughly 90 milligrams per liter, better than the kettle and well behind paper. 3 smaller honesties while I am at it. There will be fine grounds in the bottom of your cup and some in your teeth. Pour slowly, stop an inch from the end, and accept it, or use the filter. My water comes out of the tap soft and clean off a mountain, and yours may be hard and heavily chlorinated, and that changes the taste more than most people believe. A $20 filter pitcher fixes it.
And caffeine sits in an older body longer than it did in a younger one. 4 cups is my habit in a country where the dark comes at 3 in the afternoon in December. If you are sleeping poorly, the coffee after 2 in the afternoon is a more likely culprit than you think, and that is a conversation for your doctor rather than for me. One last thing that does not transfer. I am not describing a country where nobody goes out. There are excellent coffee bars in Oslo and Bergen, and Norwegians pay dearly at them. What is different is that the daily cup was never the thing you bought. It was always the thing you made, and going out was the exception. That habit is the part you can take, and it does not require moving here.
This week, buy 1 12-ounce bag of whole bean coffee with a roast date printed on it, light or medium roast, $10 to $15. If the bag only shows a best before date 2 years out, put it back and pick another. Buy a hand grinder, $20 to $30. This is the one purchase that changes the cup, and there is no version of this where pre-ground beats it. Use the kettle or saucepan you already own. Do not buy a machine for this. Tomorrow morning, cold water on the boil, off the heat, count 30, 1 heaping tablespoon of coarse ground coffee per cup straight into the water, lid on, 4 minutes by the clock. A splash of cold water, wait a moment, pour slow and low and stop before the bottom. If you are watching your cholesterol, set a paper cone and filter over the mug and pour it through. Do this every time. It costs pennies, and it takes the cholesterol question off the table entirely. Buy a steel thermos, $25 to $35, and make the day's coffee once in the morning. Fill it and put the kettle away. Nothing on a warming plate, nothing reheated in the microwave, nothing bought at 11 because you were out and it was there. Then do it for 2 weeks and keep the receipts. Not to punish yourself over what you were spending, but because 2 weeks is long enough to know whether the coffee is better, and it is the answer to that question, and not the money that decides whether you keep it. My father drank his out of the same white cup for 30 years. He never owned a machine, never bought a filter, and never in his life stood in a line to be handed a paper cup with his name spelled wrong on the side. He put water on to boil, and he waited 4 minutes, and in that 4 minutes he did nothing at all, which I now suspect was the more important half of the recipe.